Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to look at a document that tells us about many Europeans in Kenya in 1950s, at the beginning of the Mau Mau War, thought that the Mau Mau was part of communism that was spreading around the world, and many of them strongly believed so. This document I'm about to read was generated by a consul general at Nairobi. That was, like, we can say, sort of an ambassador in Nairobi. Of course, remember that Nairobi was part of the British Empire then. The US ambassador in the British Empire must have been stationed in London. But in these colonies, there were consular offices, and these people, of course, acted some kind of like ambassadors, we can say, to some extent. Now, the consul general in the 1950s in Kenya was a guy who went by the name Dos. Now, in 1952, this is at the very beginning of the Mau Mau War, Dos writes a document to the Department of State trying to explaining the affairs in Nairobi or in Kenya to the American government, of course. I'm going to read two parts of these documents, or two sections. This is a kind of long document. The first part I'm going to read is where he explains how the British settlers, or the white settlers as they were called in Nairobi, were having a very hard time trying to see where the Mau Mau were coming from and how their paradise was about to be destroyed by the Mau Mau. And this is what he said: "To the credit of the European community as a whole, although it might not be a fatal weakness, there is a realization that the African has a number of real grievances and is justified in not accepting the status quo with complacency. The successful British businessman here, the typical member of the 100% European Nairobi Rotary Club, has this on his conscience, although he is reluctant to admit it to himself, for most have never had it so good. He knows that his little paradise in Africa cannot last for very long, at least in its present condition." This Consul General in Nairobi is telling the Department of State the state of mind of a typical European settler in Kenya, especially regarding what was going on with the Mau Mau. And he's saying that most of them, while they kind of like realize where the Africans are coming from, the injustice that they are enduring, they are also feeling that they are having something good going on and it's about to be destroyed. Now, it's out of those feelings that many of them came to believe, or believed at least initially, that the Mau Mau was part of the international communism. I'm reading the part where Dos makes those statements. "There has been speculation concerning the possible tie between Mau Mau and international communism. Continuous efforts of the government have not yet uncovered any evidence of such a connection. However, several well-informed and official Europeans here say they are convinced that such a connection must exist, either through local Asians by way of South Africa, Great Britain, or through other intermediaries. Whether or not such a connection exists, the success of Mau Mau in Kenya works to the benefit of international communism in creating another focus of unrest in the Western sphere. Likewise, it could be captured by the communists at a later date." So this Dos guy, of course, is telling us about what some Europeans in Nairobi thought, and how many of them believed that Mau Mau was part of the international communism. But seems like even he himself believed it to some extent, because he says that even though there was no evidence to show that there was a connection between Mau Mau and communism, he seems to himself believe that international communism was benefiting from the actions of the Mau Mau, and he says that international communism was going to benefit out of the activities of the Mau Mau. This is a document that was published on the 10th, 1952, and yeah, we know what was happening around that time. And so it's a very interesting document because it shows us the mindset of the Europeans in Nairobi or in Kenya at that time, and also what the Americans to some extent thought about it, because we can get a glimpse of what the Consul General of the American Embassy, we can say, in Nairobi, thought of the whole affair. Those are my random thoughts.